Welcome to the Liberation is Lit podcast, where the power of storytelling meets the force of social change. I'm your host, Tayler Simon, and in this podcast, we believe in the profound impact of stories. And I am here with one of my favorite early authors that I've been working with on consignment, Barbara Howard Phipps. And she writes as Barbara Howard. And I'm excited to dive in to talk about the genre of clean, cozy mysteries and other forms of storytelling. So, Barbara, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'd like to start off with you telling us a little bit about yourself and your journey as a storyteller.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I was excited to get the invitation. I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to meet her virtually, but finally get to meet you. And you've just been awesome about handling my books and book orders and all of that and communicating. So I just want to put that out there, give you your flowers. You communicate, you handle your business. So I just wish you all the best of success in your new environment. A little bit about me. I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, went to Kent State University, was a political science major, decided that I was going to change the world. So I went to Washington, D.C. because I had a fire in my belly that, I knew how to fix some things. I was pre-law, I was going to, all of that. And I got out there and the world said, no, we're cool. We're fine. We don't need your help. You young whippersnapper, just find your space and do your thing. So I did. And so I had a career in IT for many, many, many decades there, worked on Capitol Hill and the Pentagon and so forth and so on. And I ended up relocating back to Cleveland because of 9/11 and remained here, became reconnected with family, took care of my mom and so forth. And once she passed away, I decided to just remain here and stay close to family because I have a very large extended family. And it's something about being surrounded by people who get you, you know? And so I remained here in Cleveland. I began writing as a child in elementary school, as I think most writers start early. You know that that's what you're really called to do. But life takes its little twists and turns. And even though I was mentored and was supposed to go to Sarah Lawrence, all of that, I opted to, go close to home and be near family. And so I took that detour and now I'm back. So one thing that the pandemic proved to everyone that if you don't do it now, when are you ever going to do it? You know? And so 2020 came through. I was sewing face masks. I was doing all of the things to help keep everybody alive. And I said, I'm going to write these stories. I'm going to put them out there. If nobody reads them, that's fine. But I am going to keep my promise to my little Barbara. I'm going to keep a promise to her. I owe it to her to at least do it and see what happens. And I started getting great reviews. And every time I got a review, I would contact somebody I knew and say, did you write that? Are you XYZ444? And no, no. It's just some random stranger, Barbara. Like, strangers are reading my book. Once I saw that this was something that not only I could do, but others enjoyed, I just, I was just, that was it for me. So it's my full-time thing now.
I love that. I'm going to come back to the mask and the cute bookmarks that you do, but what drew you to writing clean and cozy mysteries specifically?
Early on, when I was a little girl, I had to read all the classics, and my mom put me in these reading groups, and we always read the classics. And the ones that made me feel present in the space, in the story, was always some type of either Edgar Allan Poe or something like that, because the setting is what draws me in. And it made me feel like I was standing in the fog. I could hear, the trees. It just put me in that space. And so I was drawn into every scene. And I also, just because of the way my brain works, I also like to be able to try to figure things out, you know? And there are some wonderful genres out there like romance and, paranormal, all these other things. But it's something about having a bad guy or a bad situation and you're put in the seat of walking through that whole scenario with the main character, trying to figure it out as they go. And I think there's enough trauma in the news and in our community that I wanted to be able to bring the stories without taking you into the grit of it all. I felt like I could still challenge the imagination and imply certain things that, people as they're reading, they can understand there's a dead body over there, but I don't have to take you through the whole slasher scenario and you can still feel the loss. Recently, someone we were reading together the second book in my first series, and she said, "Why did so and so have to die? Like, why did he have to die?" I said, "Well, because it's a murder mystery, and so but someone does die in this story." So I think that people can still feel the loss without having all the grit and the grime and the trauma to it. But yeah, that was what interested me as a child, and so I just remained in that genre as my favorite.
I love that. I love me and my sister, we loved playing Nancy Drew computer games growing up. Like, we would play them for hours during the summer. And even as we got probably too old than I'd like to admit, we'd watch the Let's Plays on YouTube. So we love a good mystery, putting the pieces together. And even when I'm reading books that aren't necessarily mystery, I'm like, okay, author put this little nugget in. 'Cause I recently read Where Sleeping Girls Lie, and I'm always looking for clues, even though that one was a whodunit. But I'm just like, okay, why did the author put this little nugget in? I'm gonna pay attention to this because I feel like they want me not to pay attention, but I'm gonna keep paying attention to this. So I love that you really chose mystery to almost create a puzzle, and I feel like mystery is very reliant on setting, like you said, bringing people into the stories and things. So my next question is, even though you write fiction, how do you believe storytelling can be used as a tool for people's personal growth, or how people can take the stories that they are reading and make change into the larger world?
I love that question because and this is one of those things, it's a little controversial in the cozy subgenre because some people are like, "Well, I should be able to use a swear word here or there, or I should be able to," so a lot of this is evolving. But straight out the gate with my first story, and I put it in the description, the theme is gentrification, anxiety, foster care, homelessness, so even though there's no swearing and there's no this and that and the other and graphic violence and explicit sex and so forth, there are themes in here. I'm going to put this in your face, So some people find it like they prefer the cozies that are, a bake sale, a book club, like nice and comfy, cozy people whose lives are very comfortable and never have any serious issues. But my protagonist in my first series is Tracy Simmons, who aged out of foster care and she is trying to get established and she's having trouble maintaining a job. She suffers from anxiety and she's constantly being let go from the jobs that she's been taking. And she was able to get a fixer upper house and she's like, okay, here I am. I'm 25. I trying to make it. I'm on my own. And the world is not giving her any favors, you know. So I wanted to put someone like Tracy in the situation where we're going to follow you. And when she encounters the death of someone in her community, she zeroes in on a 14-year-old boy and she sees him. Like there are all of these adults, but she zones in on him. Like he's going to be homeless. There's nobody that's going to be able to take care of him. And I got to figure out what's happening here. So I wanted to show her as someone, even though in the middle of all of her struggles, she still had compassion. She still had room in her heart for someone else who's in the similar struggle. She could look back at her life and go like, I can't just walk away from this and not get involved. And I think that's important to show. And also, by the end of the day, by the end of book 3 in the first series, I wanted to bring in a little bit about our Black culture in the sense that we had land, we had wealth, we had names, and we had identities. And part of Tracy's journey, and that's why the series is called Finding Home, is coming out of survival mode and fear and having her armor on all the time to being able to embrace a relationship and also the community around her and become an advocate. And so that was important to me, even though it's a soft little cozy in a small town. I wanted to bring her, and I think that's the key in the storytelling, at least for some, is the character part, like what happens to her from the first page to at the end of book 3. Where is she emotionally? Where is she in her relationships? Where is she financially? What's happened to her? And what has happened to her inside, as far as her being able to love herself and love others and be strong, stronger than she thought she, 'cause there's the outer strong where you're ready to fight. And then there's the inner strong because once you're inside after the fight, you're like falling apart, you know? So I think that that's a piece of storytelling. And I'll just cap it with this. When I wrote the first story, Final Harvest, a young lady in Texas offered to read it and interview me. And I thought, wow, this is awesome. And then they had the ice storm or snow and ice and everything, the grid failed them and all of that was happening. And when she got back in touch with me, she told me that she covered herself up with all of these blankets and comforters and she had her iPad with the book. And that's what she did for the weekend while she was waiting for them to get the heat and everything, put back together for her. And I will never forget that. I will never forget that because she was able to put herself inside of Tracy and come out on the other side as a winner. And that was enough to like keep her spirits up and make her feel stronger. And that, that connection is what we live for as authors.
I love that because my absolute favorite thing, if the book doesn't have good character development, right? But if you have amazing character development, that's what sets it apart for me. So I love, love, love that. So coming back to your crafty side, I know you craft these like adorable handmade cloth bookmarks for the Liberation is Lit store, which I probably should get some more from you because they've been selling out. But you also mentioned that you made cloth masks during the pandemic. So how did crafting kind of go along with your writing and creativity?
It's so crazy because as a kid, I was afraid of sewing machines, like afraid of them. My sister was sewing something, I guess, as a class project, and she ran her finger under the needle, and I saw it. And I was traumatized. And when I talked to her about it now, she's my older sister. She said, I don't even remember that. I said, oh, I remember it. It is just burning in my memory. I never will forget it. So I wouldn't go near one. And then right at the end of 2019, right at the break of the pandemic, when it started to hit the United States hard, I said, let me learn how to do something. And then I went on QVC and got a little baby sewing machine, the cheapest that they had on Easy Pay of all things, because I'm like, I don't know if I'm even going to figure this out. And when it showed up, I had to go on YouTube to figure out like, how do I put the thread in it? Everything from zero. From zero, I knew nothing. And then here we are with people, hospitals and different places are begging for face masks. And I said, like, this is something I can do. And then we ran out of elastic and you couldn't find sources for elastic. It was just ridiculous what a fevered pitch that turned into for everyone that was out there sewing. I started like ripping apart my fitted sheets to get the elastic out of it just to be able to, but I have a large extended family and I wanted to make sure everyone had at least 2 masks, and I have like 200 members of my family that I know by name. So it was a lot of sewing. It was a lot of sewing. And when that was over with, what I remembered was, and not to go off on a tangent, but when I was a little girl, my aunt, who I never met in my life on my father's side, had made quilts for my sister and myself. She lived in Louisiana. We lived in Ohio. I never met her, as far as I know, ever. And I remember sleeping under that quilt and thinking, she must really love me to make something so beautiful for me. And she's never met me. She doesn't even know me. And the idea that someone can love you that deep and you never had to do anything to earn it. You didn't have to be a good girl. You didn't have to get good grades. You did none of that. The love was just there for me from her. And I remember every single stitch of that, even as it was falling apart and the batting was coming loose. I remember the knots in the thread. I remember everything about it. And so I decided that I was going to make one quilt every month and give it away. And so I started making them and I shipped them off to family members and they'd be like, so that's what sparked it. I was like, I want to be able to leave something like she left for me. And I want people to be up under something and feel love, especially after what we had just gone. Now, how does that relate to writing? I piece. One of the things that I enjoy most is piecing, which is like cutting all the little pieces of it. Like you buy this beautiful fabric, you chop it up into a million little pieces, and then you rearrange it and then you sew it all back together again. It's the craziest, stupidest thing that you can, but it's what we do. So you buy glorious looking fabric and then you figure out how you're going to rearrange it. And I like that part of it. I like the cutting and the piecing. In storytelling, it's a similar thing because my characters are bits and pieces of people that I've known or met or worked with or related to. The setting in the stories are taken from various places where I've lived and moved to or visited. So I can take a character like Josh St. John and say he's part my cousin, part my husband's cousin, part my coworker, like I can take bits and pieces of their characteristics and Frankenstein them into some type of person in the story. So I can take pieces of a small town that I visited, or when I went over, to Israel, or when I went into Canada, or when I went down south to Florida, and I can imagine a place and put them in my small town, a place in Florida, which was never in Ohio, but I can take that store or that playground or that building or that restaurant and drop it in the middle of my Midwestern small town in my story. So it's a similar thing, where you kind of have pieces of fabric and you blend it into one thing. It's kind of like that with the stories as well.
I also think when you were talking about the quilting aspect, it's leaving a legacy, right? And giving someone something to let them know that they're loved, even though you've never met them before, they've never met you before. So I like that when you said that, that really struck me. And I kind of related that to your stories as well. So I love that. My next question is what you grounded in this work? I'm a writer too, and I know like writing can be so difficult. It can be therapeutic, but also like sitting down, finding time to write can be difficult. So what keeps you grounded in this work?
I'm going to say the imagination is just always there for me. I think there was one, I don't know if it was David Baldacci, but I think he said writers look at the world through a different prism. Like we're always fiction writers, we're always imagining different scenarios. And something can spark you. Like it's the Taste of Rain, which is the first book in the second series. There was a news report that someone walked into my local Walmart, walked into the luggage department, picked up a suitcase, walked into the produce area where the food and everything is, packed it full of meat and walked out of the store with it. And I heard that and I'm like, that's a crazy. Ooh, I'm going to remember. I jotted it down. So I'm going to stick that in a story somewhere, because so I have someone that's got a suitcase full of meat and gets picked up by the police, so that's like, there's always something out there that's going to spark you to like, that stands out. And I think I could use that. Or there's a place that you walk into and you think, this, what would happen if, the DoorDash delivery guy is not really a delivery guy. He's in like, so anything can spark it. So I think it's easy for me to come up with little ideas. Now the follow through of sitting down and writing it out. I am a plotter. And I know some people are not, and they like to like just put everything down in the sandbox and then build the castle. I like to have the blueprint before I build the castle. So I will sit down and figure out all the parts that belong in the story before I start writing it. And then I adjust it as I go. So for me, I think that's also the analytical piece that is like part of why I went into IT and all of that is I like the structure of it. I like to be able to map out the places. I have a list of all the names. I have a list and description of all the places where they're going to go. I map out the city or the town or the county or whatever it is. So the building of it, and I guess that ties in with quilting as well, the building of the world first. And then it becomes easy for me to write the story because I have everything in place to write it. Now I know what goes here. And I don't write in order. So if a scene comes to me, and a lot of times it'll be dialogue. I was chatting with my author friend and about an idea I had for a short story, which is now going to be a full, it's not going to be short. But I gave her the idea and I said, here's what I'm thinking about doing. And I said, and then he lies to her and they break up and where she says, oh no, I would be devastated. I would want to put a bullet in him. I just, no, you can't do that. I said, no, I'm absolutely going to do that. No, you can't. That's like, you can't have him lie to her. Like I said, yeah, I'm actually going to have him crash and burn because then the recovery is going to be beautiful. So it's like bouncing those things off of someone else to get the perspective and then saying, nah, I'm going to do it anyway. Because this is the journey I'm going to take them on. So, having those friends that get it, that are writers and hopefully write in the same genre, you kind of feed off of each other. The energy, you get pumped up and they get pumped up as well, so having that support helps a ton. But yeah, I think, that's a long rambling answer to it. But I think that when the inspiration hits and I jot it down somewhere and then I start to map it out, when I finally have the map ready, the writing part is easy for me.
I wish I could be that structured. One day, one day. So speaking of your idea, what are some of your upcoming projects and what have you been reading lately?
I'll start with a reading. I have been reading two. One is a intrigue, which I love. Is if I had to pick a genre that I feel very comfortable, if I pick it up, an author that I love is Katie Richards. She was a native of DC and then she moved she's a lawyer. She's currently lives in Canada. But it's a series and I'm on book one of her series and it's called Pursuit of the Truth. I want to make sure I get it right because sometimes I say the pursuit of truth, but it's pursuit of the truth. And I love her writing. Her writing style is so clean and elegant, and the pacing, it just moves you right through. It's this is not the perfect word to use, but it's intelligent. That's the only way I can really describe it. It's like her phrasing, and so I love her, Katie Richards. Um, and what I'm working on. So my second series, I started with A Brand New Little Town. Amira Cooper is the protagonist. And I built up a little community of friends around her. And I've gotten through book 3, and it looks like there's going to be a continuation of. I thought it would end at book 3. Book 3 is the one that came out in February. Match Made in Murder. Yeah, a Match Made in Murder where I kill a matchmaker on Valentine's Day. So all about love on Valentine's Day. So I thought that was going to be, and I launched it on, release on Valentine's Day. So, and she's had 12 brides getting married on Valentine's Day, big event, and I kill her off on the event. So I thought that would be the end of it, but apparently there's still interest in Amira and her possible relationship with someone in the story. I'm going to continue on with that a little bit coming out in the fall, but there's a standalone that I'm working on that is going to be more on the romance side. I don't think there's going to be any murders in this one. I'm gonna try my hand. And I was joking with that friend and saying, "Can I write a story without a murder in it? Can I write a story without a dead body in it?" I don't know. And because she writes both romance and mystery, she said, "I think you can." So she's gonna hold my hand through it. Yeah. So I'm gonna try my hand at getting this romance done. I don't have a title for it yet, but look for it like October-ish timeframe. And we're with a school teacher on the brink of retiring, trying to leave a legacy behind. And she runs into an old flame, and we go on that journey with them. So yeah, end of October-ish. I tried it. This is side note. October 18th is my grandfather's birthday, if he were living. And I tend to, when I'm going to do something big, a big push of something brand new that I've never done before, I try to do it on his birthday because I feel like it gives me incentive to make sure I don't embarrass Papa's watching, So look for that October 18th, hopefully.
I'm excited. I'm so excited. One last question I have for you before we conclude. What advice would you offer listeners who want to make a positive impact in their community?
Oh my goodness, there's so many opportunities because they don't have to be giant things to do. It could be something so small that makes a big difference. I mentioned, sewing the face mask. I don't have to do that anymore, right? But I still have this little sewing machine. And my church had this sew in, and I'm like, what's a sew in? I don't even know what that's about. Sew in, I think like hair, you know. I know that's not what this is. But I picked up my little baby rinky dinky sewing machine, and we were making adult bibs for those who are in hospice care and in dementia and so forth that need, something to drape across their, and we made it out of the softest fabric and so forth. And it's such a small thing, but in the life of someone in that state and their family and their caregivers, it's a huge, so I was involved as a community. I went through master gardener training, and I was out in the community gardens. Sometimes it's walking through the mud with a neighbor and showing them, no, this is a weed. You can pull this one. No, this one's not a weed. You can leave it. No, this is a good bug. Leave that good bug. No, that's a bad bug. We want to get the bad bugs out, so it meant that they could feed their family out of their garden, you know? So there's so many opportunities to do small things that make a big impact. The point that I think that I would make is keep your heart open to the fact that you have something of value. Because I think sometimes we're looking for, and I'm partially involved with the political, climate here in my city. I do a little journaling, and reporting and such. And I think sometimes people think that they have to be out there marching, they have to be out there protesting, they have to be out there, on committees, they have to get on a board, they do all of these big things. But the truth of it is, you have something inside of you that's of value to someone else that you probably think is nothing, that you can cook, that you know how to make the best mac and cheese, that you know how to do someone's hair, that you can read to a child at story time at the library, that the fact that you have a voice is enough to be able to make an impact on someone, because a child that you're reading to can grow up to be the next Barack Obama, so just know that whatever you have inside of you is enough to make an impact, and just keep your heart open for the opportunity when it comes, and say yes and do it.
I love that so much. Keep your heart open and sharing your gifts with the world. Love that. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Where can people find you and your work?
You can find me out there on the web. I am at authorbarbarahoward.com is the website. And on that website, you will find all my social media handles. So I'm out there. You can find me on Instagram, on Facebook. I don't do TikTok. I don't do that, but I'm out there on Blue Sky and all the others as well. So you can find me at authorbarbarahoward.com, and all my books are listed there. And the audiobooks are out there too for people who don't like to actually have a physical book and prefer to listen. All of my books are on audio. Spotify.
We love a good audiobook, so I'm about to go re-listen to them. Thank you again, Barbara, for joining me and having this awesome conversation. If you all, as listeners, have any stories to share, want to suggest topics, just want to connect, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook. We are on TikTok, even though I'm not very consistent with it, at Liberation is Lit, or visit our website, liberationislit.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review. And remember, your voice matters. And together, through the lens of stories, we're going to make a difference in the world. Thank y'all for listening.
Thank you.